Hello friends, it's me again. Today I wanted to actually do a bit of Voice of Lancelot bashing, so we're gonna jump on the underside. And what I'll do is just go in things that I noticed that this speaker doesn't do so well. And so this is for all of you that think, this was too much of a hyperbole, it sounds all too good to be true. So we'll look at the other side. And we'll look at, what it does different, what it doesn't do well. And now, one big caveat, this is just based on my experience having these in my room, and it's mainly compared against dynamic and bipole speakers, whether it's ribbons or electrostats. I don't have that much experience with open baffle, I just didn't like it the first time I tried it, but I could be wrong. So, first of all, what immediately jumps out is the presentation, because this speaker is more about the whole than about separation of anything that is in the music. It's a very different experience. Yes, it just seems that the contrast that it portrays is just different. It has a more natural contrast, not an exaggerated contrast. And even sort of with the black level against what it is there, but it's not, when you have these elements and instruments, voices floating in a black space and then with some air around them and you can really see them in that way. Yeah, it's not that. So it's more natural, like, if you go to a music concert, there's always a little bit of noise or so, and that is, it is not pitch black, and this is sort of a bit the same. So that is definitely very different. Now the soundstage, sort of a bit of a similar story. It's just less accurate, I would say. It's not, again, not the pinpointing that you get with stereos, that with a stereo setup where you have the sort of the beam that really captures your eye, and you sit in the middle and it just grabs you from left and right, and it forms this real strong image. It's not like that. It's a bit more floating in space, like bigger. Janos actually said, there's no mini Muppet Show in front of you, and it's not a picture as such. It's a bit more woolly and with depth, and it's more floating, like a spatial representation. So it still comes in the depth and the dimension of space and so on, but it's just not as nuanced. In many speakers you can hear all these small little reflections from the room and the floor and so on, and those spatial details, they seem to disappear a little bit. And yeah. But it's not that it disappears, it's just less prominent. But then on the other hand, for example, if you look at weight and heft of an orchestra or any band, that is there in space. It's really convincing. So which is probably more the dynamic side of it. So there is where the picture doesn't lack anything. In fact, it is on par with the live experience. Other things what I noticed is, for example, with drums, if the recording had them against the back wall, and you could, or an instrument is just recorded like 2 meters away, so you get a really acute perception that it was 2 meters away, or the drum set was against the wall, and you get that reverb. So it's a bit of a mixed bag there. Like some elements, so long as it pertains to sort of the microphone distance, it translates really well. But if it's the acoustic space thing, it seems to disappear somewhat. Sorry. So yeah. So similar with details in the music. yeah, some seem to drop off. I mean, I was listening to that Lou Reed track, and if I listen it to on a headphone, there's a reverb in his voice, like they added some little echo to make it a bit more fuller sound. And that seems to disappear on this speaker, the way I have it. And generally, if I'm just to generalize, that's what it seems to do. But it almost seems that all the musical details come through, but then the effects seem to drop off. It's really odd. But that said, music-wise or tonality and so on, that still comes through. But yeah, some of the details just seem to just not be important or so. They seem to drop off. It's really it's an interesting thing. So if you like those things in your recordings and you find it unacceptable that the echo behind his voice drops off, then yeah, this is not a speaker for you. And I think Janos speaks about the dynamic compression that some speakers have, so that when you hear Diana Krall, you can hear her singing full out loud, but at the same token you can hear her smacking her lips, and those things are not on the same level. So it just seems when you listen to these that detail is just not there. It doesn't highlight it. It just disappears. Maybe because it's not important. But I mean, it seems a bit strange for a speaker to know what it needs to drop off, but it that's what it does. I spoke about imaging a little bit, so there's no pinpointing imaging. I would say I was listening to The Wall from Pink Floyd, and it just seemed that Roger Waters' voice was just a real life-size person, more standing in front of me. Not like really accurate, but it was definitely on the size of him, and in his, the spatial, his space was more defined, that he was like a half meter wide, and I don't know where it ended and started. Well, for example, if I go to my headphones or on electrostats that beam, like quad ESLs or something, they just tell you exactly where something is, and it's very precise. And similar effect with the widebanders, with the single driver speakers that are so accurate. So you don't get that, but it's still, the nice thing about it is that it still has it seems to be a bit more life size, not the miniature Muppet Show. Extension from left to right is also good. I noticed, I was just listening to Jean-Michel's Oxygen, and it goes way beyond the speakers left and right. So that the spatial cue is pretty good. Other things that don't work is, for example, when you have nice sound effects. So I just remember Roger Waters' Amused to Death album, and it has beautiful cue sound effects in it that just come from everywhere, and flying over helicopters, and mighty impressive. But I mean, it just doesn't. Forget about setting your friends down and listening to such effects, because it just doesn't have that effect, or it seems a bit off. And there's some helicopter, but it's not there, and it's not life size, and it just doesn't work. It's like the effects just won't work. It's not that you don't hear them; they're there, but not as impactful. So, so. And that is a bit in contrast. So what it does do is, when you get friends around and they're just walking around the room, they're not near the speakers, they're not sitting down, they'll hum and sing to the music. I've never had that with speakers. So that's actually, so I think they engage you a bit more in that regard. Somebody coming? No, that's the gas. All right. So, not as pure as a single driver, but if you compare it, I'd say it's a more capable driver, a capable speaker system. So, it might not do everything as well, but I just feel that it's quite complete. But it maybe makes some sacrifices here and there that elements it doesn't do so well. So it is a compromise, like every speaker is. Now, and finally, some technicalities around this. So ceiling height has an influence on this speaker. So it just you just need, you know, if you have a lower ceiling height, it does will make a difference, and you'll need to tune it differently in the volume of the tweeter. If you want to show off with measurements, good luck. It's not going to look pretty because the upfiring tweeter is in a different direction, and it just makes that the measurements, I mean, they don't look bad, but yeah, you won't win on specs in that regard. And the other thing is just it's highly reactive. So it just means, I mean, I had one change in my amplifier, and I set off to I changed the bit for silver wire, silver interconnect, and that immediately I had to change the crossover because the tonal balance changed. So it is not as stable as some other speakers that where you can swap out maybe your equipment more easily. It's pretty sensitive, and it's also sensitive to telling you that you didn't do a good job on your crossover. But once you get it right, the temptation to constantly tweak drops quite quickly. So if you just want to have a peaceful existence, once you get it right, it is peaceful. But until that time, it can be a bit unsettling. Well, that is it. I hope that sort of brings things a little bit in balance, and that I'm not overhyping this train, because, you know, also the big caveat is this is just with my experience. But I hope that brings a bit more nuisance what you can expect with this speaker. And in the next video, I'll address some more people that are sort of ready to build and with their questions, and get into that. Until so far, thank you for listening all the way through. Have a brilliant day, and see you next time. Bye bye.